Like, they basically took everything that we already had, lumped it into this Department of Homeland Security, gave it a bigger budget to do more bullshit and get nothing done and create all these jobs for their crony government buddies.
Basically what amounts to police cars. In fact, I think they even say police on them, and they have a big Homeland Security logo on the side. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Because they're not marked, how do we know they're domestic and not international? How do we know we're not being attacked by insurgents from another country? How do we know that these people aren't being human trafficked?
There's a thing called the Posse Comitatus Act, which prevents...
I don't know if we can say that without getting demonetized.
We're already going to get demonetized.
People that are so fervently arguing for the Second Amendment because we need to protect ourselves in case the government becomes tyrannical are like silent. Why the hell didn't we start fighting back then? You know, because this is where it's got us.
Well, yeah, and the way I see it, this is only the beginning. Like you think it's bad now. Oh no, we're just getting warmed up here.
The subjects of who Sun Tzu was talking about in The Art of War, like we're the idiots that are getting played by the mastermind tacticians.
Yeah, exactly. Like divide and conquer, basically. If you can get people to see each other as enemies, then you can manipulate them.
Microscopy Sink Kitchen, another two welcome.
Okay, Yoda.
I'm Casey Rochford, and we'd love it if you'd subscribe, share, and like, because awesome are you.
Yeah. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and you'll have to forgive me for being a little sweaty because it's kind of hot here in this house. Rather toasty. But don't forget, we write our own music, which is available on iTunes and Spotify and such places like that. And stick around to the end of the show so you can hear something new. Maybe it'll be cool. I don't know. And, you know, if you feel adventurous, check out our website at ksmvidcast.com. You can get news and information, more, see upcoming videos, and converse and stuff like that. So Casey, what would you like to talk about today?
Well, we all know Portland is weird. But,
hence that show Portlandia. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But sadly, it's not in a comical way right now. There's kidnappings, you know, full-on abductions going on in unmarked vehicles by mysterious, unbadged, uniformed officers of the government.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff about that. I mean, I don't personally, I didn't have a chance to really dig too deep into that particular aspect of things, but I did hear about it.
Yeah, well, I looked into it a bit because I was basically going to call the FBI tip line and be like, yeah, is this see something, say something? Because there's terrorist activity going on in Portland. Because, yeah, the government are a bunch of fucking terrorists right now.
Oh, good. Finally, you and I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah,
no, I mean, like, you're right. Like, it's coming to what I've often thought would be like just outside the realm of possibility. Like I always kind of thought like, well, we would stop just short of like abducting our own citizens for exercising their First Amendment rights. And, you know, but hey, here we are. Cheers.
Yeah.
Welcome
Cheers.
to America, where you're never going to leave and your family will never find out where you went.
Yeah, we'll start spelling America with a K, right?
Maybe 3.
Yeah. Oh, ouch.
Yep.
Yeah, that is really weird. And I, being a person of logic, I'm hesitant to jump to any particular conclusions without a lot of information. But it is troubling. I mean, one of the big troubling things now, of course, this is I think it's the agents in question is it Customs and Border, like, is it those
Department
people?
Department of Homeland Security, but they encompass ICE as well. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, and this is the thing that I was bitching about when they passed the Homeland Security Act, creating this kind of all too powerful entity that could be controlled and was basically tasked with eliminating terrorism at all costs. I mean, because really, here's the thing. All you have to do is label somebody a terrorist and anything goes. You could be black bagged and shipped off to Guantanamo and everybody's cheering it on like, oh yeah, you're getting the terrorists, you're protecting us, keeping us safe.
Yeah.
Like there's a huge risk in that kind of thing. There's a lot of room for abuse in that regard. I mean, all the Snowden stuff with the NSA and all the spying and everything, it's like all of that is connected to terrorism and Homeland Security, all that kind of stuff. Like,
well, yeah, I started looking into it because I've always thought the Department of Homeland Security was a big waste, completely useless, just a money pit.
Yeah, well, it is. But
yeah,
go ahead.
But
do
you know,
tell.
I was looking into like efficacy statistics and things like that, and the report that the Department of Homeland Security released, it's like 140 pages. None of it actually. I couldn't find a single chapter on terrorism, by the way.
Yeah, well, you know that a lot of these Patriot Act and Homeland Security Act kind of things, they really haven't been used for real terrorist activities. It's actually been more about like connecting with the DEA, drug enforcement, victimless crimes kind of bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty
That's
much
what I was
how they
going to say.
use.
Like the way that they've basically sunk tendrils into this new department to make it so that it can never go away is that they encompassed, the TSA, which used to just be like some blokes that worked for the airport that worked the metal detector,
Well,
and now it's like federal agents or whatever.
No, the TSA is a product of all of that. The
Right.
post 9/11 stuff. Like before that, you just had regular security.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Now it's all housed under the Homeland Security. The Secret Service, which was around and worked just fine before the Department of Homeland Security, is now part of Homeland Security. It's like they basically took everything that we already had, lumped it into this Department of Homeland Security, gave it a bigger budget to do more bullshit and get nothing done and create all these jobs for their crony government buddies.
Yeah. And it's been found, like conclusively proven, that the TSA is pretty much like a pretty inept. Like, not on an individual. I'm sure the people working there think they're doing good, but as a system, it's completely dysfunctional. Like, it doesn't actually work. It's security theater, as people call it.
It's one of those things where, like, you can argue that because they exist, nobody's even trying to sneak weapons onto a plane or something. But it could also just be that maybe people weren't doing that all that much to begin with. And, whatever happened to armed U.S. air marshals on planes? Wasn't that a thing?
Exactly. Well, that's the actual way you do that, and other countries do the same sort of thing, and it seems to work pretty well. Um, yeah, that one. So we're not really in this country supposed to have like federal police, like actual police, but
Mhm.
now I see rolling around in the streets. Uh, Basically what amounts to police cars. In fact, I think they even say police on them, and they have a big Homeland Security logo on the side. And I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that not supposed to happen? Uh, isn't that like illegal in some way? But this is what amounts to the Enabling Act. Like this is Homeland Security Act, Patriot Act, to basically just like open the floodgates for anything to happen for any reason. All they have to do is say terrorists, and there you go.
Yeah, and, yeah, and the irony is they're the terrorists. They're
Hmm.
they're attacking and kidnapping civilians for political reasons. That is textbook definition, whether you're looking at Merriam-Webster or the FBI's website. That is a textbook definition of terrorism and domestic terrorism, if you want to be specific. But because they're not marked, how do we know they're domestic and not international? How do we know we're not being attacked by insurgents from another country? How do we know that these people aren't being human trafficked?
Well,
Or,
and that kind of goes to something that I have a huge problem with, and complain about all the time: the no knock warrants and stuff like that, and plainclothes officers just busting into somebody's house in the middle of the night with guns drawn, and not announcing who they are. They have no uniforms, and that's a huge problem too.
that's
Civil
not
asset
constitutional.
forfeiture, like, well, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, a lot of this does come down to the drug war.
Mhm.
That's a huge problem, and well, we've already we've talked about that at length.
Yeah,
But getting back to this Portland thing, uh, there's a thing called the Posse Comitatus Act, which prevents
I don't know
the
if we can
use.
say that without getting demonetized.
We're already going to get demonetized. Just everything we say here. But yeah, that essentially bars the use of soldiers for domestic purposes, like law enforcement purposes. Obviously, you can say there's a natural disaster, right? You could obviously call in the military to provide aid and build things and provide food and medical assistance or whatnot, but not for the purpose of law enforcement. And as far as I know, I think it actually applies only to the Army, but the intent is pretty clear that like you don't use our military for law enforcement domestically. Well, we shouldn't be doing it
Yeah,
globally either, actually, but that's its own episode.
yeah, and that's the other thing. They're dressed up like military. I don't think they are military, but like if they're going to dress that way, they should follow military code where you like if you're in uniform, it has to be like properly labeled with your name and rank and the branch of your service and all that stuff. Like, I, this uh Pussy Cucaracha Act. I don't know if it covered that, but uh,
Ugh.
like, I mean, it really what bothers me. I don't know what bothers me more. The fact that the government is doing this, which isn't all that surprising considering Trump is our king now. Um, but
I
like the
didn't vote for you. Oh well, that was a quote from Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail.
um, the other
You
thing that
don't
really
vote
bothers
for. Go ahead.
what
Yeah.
well, the other thing that really bothers me is that um, all these people that are so fervently arguing for the Second Amendment because we need to protect ourselves in case the government becomes tyrannical are like silent. I hear crickets. I don't see them coming out in droves and forming a firing line to protect the people exercising their First Amendment right, which is the Second Amendment is supposed to be First Amendment insurance, right? So
Yeah, well,
where the fuck are we? Like
that's a really good point. And I think you'll find in general, 2A supporters and enthusiasts are fairly pacifistic, and in their behavior in general, like very disinclined to actually take up arms and do something. But it's still early days. Maybe if things get heated. Now, granted, there is a bit of a divide between these groups. Like, I don't know, the people that are down there are people who, at least a good proportion of them, historically have been against the Second Amendment rights. So it's like I could see people being a little bit hesitant to kind of go defend their detractors. Although
it's a bit of a misconception though, because like a very, very small percentage of people are actually like in favor of repealing the Second Amendment.
No, I mean, just in general, like restrictions and that kind of thing. Like, I think they're kind of like, well, this is just how it happens. I mean, I haven't like checked the forums or anything like that. So I don't use Twitter, thank God. But I mean, that could be. But you make a really, really good point that we're really all in this together. It doesn't matter if you have a different point of view. On principle, people should be defending people.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of different things going on here. There's quite a few moving parts to this whole entire thing. The black bagging people and snatching them off the streets and stuff is one thing. And then there's the other side, like people, I guess there's a lot of the action has kind of been centered around this federal courthouse, where a bunch of federal agents are kind of like holed up inside of this. They've kind of like put up barricades and stuff, and they're in there, and then all the protesters and stuff are like kind of attacking it or breaking down things and busting down doors and stuff. And it's sort of like, it's nuts. That's
yeah. I mean, like we've talked about this before, where like 60% of felonies are like vandalizing government buildings, and it's like this is property is not a big deal. Violence, like I looked up violence, and it actually does include like damaging property, which I think is stupid. That's not violence.
Well, I mean, that's it's actually quite a philosophical conversation there. Being able to defend your own house or something against somebody breaking things, right? Somebody setting fire to it or whatever. It's like, that's your home,
Well, like
now,
like force, at least. Like you can't black bag them and make them disappear,
well, you can if you're the state. They have a monopoly on the use of force, really. Like, they're the only ones allowed to use force in response to anything.
I mean, I mean, that is certainly true, but like the second that even became a saying, like I've heard you say that like a million times, like the second that became a saying, why the hell didn't we start fighting back then? Because this is where it's got us.
Well, yeah, and the way I see it, this is only the beginning. Like you think it's bad now. Oh no, we're just getting warmed up here.
Yeah.
So grab your popcorn and get ready for a show.
Well, Attorney General Barr said that they're going to deploy this nationwide, and I live in a big city. I think it's time I arm myself, because if I see that shit happening, I'm going to shoot the fucker in the head.
Well, I mean, I think it is good to stay armed for very many reasons, actually. But yeah, this is the thing is, I don't know. I mean, it's hard, like looking at it, there's a lot of noise. It's difficult to sort out like what's actually going on. But certainly it's to me, very troubling that there's any kind of federal force, armed force coming in to do something that essentially should be left to the state to deal with, right? Like, what happens in a state is no business of the federal government unless they ask for help, right? Like natural disasters or whatnot, you know. But if they're just like, hey, this is what we want to do, well, that's, I guess, I mean, as long as everybody's on board with it, you know, that's fine. One thing. Oh, go ahead. Oh, well, I was gonna say, like, I keep hearing, digging into this, there's like some lawsuit or something, and the city of Portland is demanding that the federal agents leave and stuff. And I'm thinking, well, do you not have sheriffs? Because actually, a sheriff is more powerful than the president. They can, yeah. Oh no, sheriffs are like the end all be all in their jurisdiction. Not like they can't go out and do things, but within your own jurisdiction, you can essentially force federal agents to leave. Like, that's it, you got to go. The sheriff demands it, and they can use force to push you out because,
well, they don't have the force that the government does.
well, that's true, but they don't necessarily have to. Because I think as soon as some kind of firefight begins, I think they're going to get a lot of supporters, probably.
I'm not so sure anymore.
Well, yeah.
Because I mean, here's the thing. You say there's a lot of noise. You know, like I hear people saying, "Well, we need to wait until all the facts come in." People got black bagged, thrown in unmarked vans, and disappeared, and nobody's heard from them since, except for like they released one dude. And I don't know, like if I'm on the street and I see someone coming at me with a bag to put over my head and they've got an unmarked van, I'm not going to sit back and be like, well, this could be a lot of things. I'm going to fucking run or fight or something, right? Like that's how we should all be reacting to that same information. We should be acting as if it's happening right in front of us, if it's happening to us.
Well, and yeah,
because it probably will.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, you know, that's one of the problems I have with like unofficial activities, that you don't know what's going on. If there were cops in a cop car, right, like fully uniformed and they've got badges and all this stuff, and they're arresting somebody, you could be like, okay, well, that's an arrest. That's like a thing that happens, right? And you can investigate it. You can talk to them. You can get information. There's public documentation of that. But just random guys in camo or something, like jumping out of an SUV and grabbing somebody, well, that could be anything. Like you said, I mean, it's like, how do you know if that's like a federal agent or a cop, or how do you know what the justification is? It could literally be anyone. It could be somebody who came here from North Korea and they're abducting somebody. It could be somebody who came here from Russia and abducting somebody. Who knows? You have no idea. It could just be somebody down the street that has a gripe with somebody, and they just, yeah, it's like, that's a huge problem.
That's why people need to be out there defending the people that are getting swooped up like that, because yeah, you don't know, and they refuse to tell you. So at that point, there should be like, you know, I mean, Good Samaritan law, right? If you go and kill that unmarked federal agent to save somebody's life, because you know, who knows if they're being executed or not. It is our government. They might be doing that.
I wouldn't say you'd necessarily have to kill them, but force of numbers, right? Like enough people could potentially thwart such an event from happening, and they should try.
In a perfect world, yeah.
Even if they're armed, right? It's very troubling. I think the like you said, you know, the thing is, it's not on the up and up. It's not like transparent. Nobody knows what's happening. I mean, imagine if you were, let's say, I mean, anybody can buy camo or whatever. I think, didn't they have camo or green or something? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah,
anybody can buy a uniform.
Army surplus stores or something.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, so imagine if you just saw on the street somebody being snatched for unknown reasons. Well, that's clearly an abduction. If behind it there's some kind of legitimacy, that's fine. But that is a big problem. And I think people intervening are within, like, they're on the right side if they're intervening in that, just because it could be anything. And so they probably should do that. Like, I'm not in Portland, so
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
yeah, the only way I could see that being feasible is if, I mean, it's sad that it might have to come to this, but if let's say you and I and like 6 or 7 of our buddies are all like macho, and we're like, yeah, we would defend them or whatever. But like if we were out on the street alone and there's like 8 dudes with guns doing this, we might be kind of like, well, do I want it? Is today a good day to die? Like, so might it have to come to this buddy system where we just don't go outside unless we're with 8 other dudes that have pledged to defend somebody from something like that? Does it take moving in swarms like a whole bunch of bees in order to protect our hive from the big bad government?
It might. I mean, it would be unfortunate if it came to that, but it might.
Yeah, I mean, really, like walking around with riot shields and guns and armor ourselves, like just to protect ourselves from the guys with the riot shields and the and the armor and the guns.
Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah, because I think if you're like by yourself, it's there's a lot to lose. There's a lot of risk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would probably.
I remember growing up and my neighbor had a bumper sticker that said, when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. But guns are not outlawed, and the law has almost outlawed freedom, and our guns are no match for their guns.
Well, they can be, because
no, they can't, because like I said, we're not courageous enough, and we're not in numbers enough. They always overwhelm us. There's always more of them. There are always bigger guns and more of those big guns than there will ever be at any one given moment on the street. And that's what I'm saying. If we're gonna have to like go out in buddy systems like mini militias in order to prevent this shit from happening, and then that might have to happen. But that's a scary America, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. It's a good point. But the thing is, what I was saying about it, it can be, is, yeah, it does take people actually doing something, whatever it might be. You can't just sit idly by, but people seem to be rather inclined to do that. And I think there's one of the things that's an issue is there's a divide philosophically between a lot of people, when I think if people actually had conversations, excuse me, they'd realize they have a lot in common, and there might be a reason to get together, like 2A people and protesters and drug legalization people and whatnot. Like, everybody should be conversing and getting together.
Yeah.
But the fact that everybody's kind of at odds with each other does hinder any kind of movement in that regard, and certainly puts any individual group of people at risk.
I feel like we, the people, have become the subjects of who Sun Tzu was talking about in The Art of War. Like we're the idiots that are getting played by the mastermind tacticians. They're creating this political divide in their constituency so that we're too busy fighting with each other. And this is a pattern I've always talked about. Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. They're so busy fighting with each other that neither of them are getting shit done for racism. We're too busy fighting. We're too busy fighting about Democrats and Republicans. And now there's like whack-ball libertarians coming out, and Kanye West's coming out, and all kinds of different shit to stir the pot. And oh my God, it's just like we're falling for all the oldest tricks in one of the oldest books.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like divide and conquer, basically. If you can
Mm-hmm.
get people to see each other as enemies, then you can manipulate them.
Yeah, and even
And
if we rise up with our guns, and it'll get bad enough to the point where they just drop bombs on us, which we can't do to them. So,
well, so you say. But
well, we
actually,
do
here's the
need help
thing.
from another country, but yeah.
Well, okay, now the thing is, in revolutions, right, or any kind of situation like coups or uprisings and stuff like that, if it's just, the military does tend to side with the people and not with the government. So
I
there
sure
is
hope
that
so.
advantage, huh?
I sure hope so, because I made a post on Facebook yesterday, like seriously asking people of the military or that did serve in the military at some point if their oath means more to them than their safety, or like protesters burning things, like not a single person. And I know I've got military people on my friends list, not a single person no, like
Hmm.
nobody from the military, I mean, made any kind of comment whatsoever. And that disappointed me. It's like
Well,
I'm looking for hope. I'm looking for a reason to trust you guys, and you're starting to scare me.
okay, now here's the thing. They may be a little bit like inside, they might be on board, but publicly, they may be a little bit concerned about just advocating for anything or saying, "Oh yeah, we're totally on board with that."
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I even told them they could message me privately, but like not even that, because
hmm,
I do understand, like they don't actually have that much freedom themselves, ironically. They don't have freedom of speech. They can't talk shit about the president, the sitting president.
mm-hmm.
Um, they get in trouble for that. Uh, there's a lot that they can't do, because it's too restricted. It's like it if if the military were a drug that were being regulated, the FDA would be like, "Whoa, back off there, soldier. That's a little stringent, don't you think?" Like they're very strict, and
Yeah. Well, and so as far as hope and stuff like that, just know that historically, the military usually sides with the people, and they're not inclined to drop bombs on cities, um, or anything like that. I mean, the thing is, yeah, okay, there could be some people somewhere in an area where somebody they disagree with or something, and they're ordered to do something, but it's like they're right next door is maybe one of their family members or something like that. Um, so,
yeah. Well, I mean,
and
that's
they're the ones, the military are the ones that have that capacity, not the Secret Service
right.
or anything like that. Like Border Patrol, whatever. They just have pistols and maybe rifles and stuff. That's all they got.
I mean,
Uh,
that's the hope I'm looking for, though. Is I just want to know they're on our side, because I don't know right now, because those people are unmarked in unmarked vehicles. I don't know for sure that that's not already our military attacking us.
well, that's a really good point.
We don't know
Yeah.
who it is. It could be ninjas. It could be the military. It could be, a bunch of clones of Donald Trump. I mean, who knows? Like, who
Yeah.
knows what weirdness is going on right now? But we better make it stop, because shit's getting out of control. It's been getting out of control, but
Well, yeah. I think people. Yeah, I got to say though, a battle with ninjas would be pretty epic. Um, uh,
you all wouldn't last.
I'm a pirate now that I have a boat.
Anti-sweetons.
RealUltimatePower.net. Um, yeah, it is hot, man. Jesus. All right, I'm like getting all wrinkly. I'm all sweating and stuff. Jeez. Um,
It's the government death ray.
yeah, exactly.
Set the stun.
It's HARP.
Yeah.
um, I do. Yeah, it is getting a little crazy.
I mean, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, maybe even the Eighth Amendment, like all of them are somebody's toilet paper right now. Uh,
Well, we rights those don't
yeah.
exist anymore. They've been legislated and you know, court case lawed out of existence. Basically,
Oh
there's
yeah.
an
I mean,
exception to everything.
it's even in the dictionaries as something a government bestows upon its people.
Which is very funny because the conversations in early days in the US revolved around that very principle. Like, if we enumerate these rights, they're going to think these are the only rights, and they're going to think it's something coming from the government rather than these being innate, like, principles, basically, like a concept that applies to everybody, which pisses me off because, you know, I like, speaking of like Guantanamo and stuff like that, um it, you know, and terrorists and whatnot, and I constantly hear people saying, oh, well, they don't have rights, the Bill of Rights doesn't apply to them and stuff, or it doesn't apply to citizens. No, it applies to everybody, because I mean, it's explicitly outlined in founding documents, in the Constitution, in the Declaration of Independence, that these are things that are human,
Right.
that they're simply stating
Yeah.
based on someone's humanity. So it's not because of the government. It's, yeah, ew.
Yeah.
Don't need to, I'm about to go on a rant, so I'm gonna I'll leave it at that.
I'll jump off on a rant there, but I've been seeing a lot of people saying some pretty scary things lately. They're saying stuff like, well, just because our document said that all humans have rights, and again, this is the anti all lives matter thing. They're like going to such extremes, but they're like, well, even though it said all lives, we certainly didn't act that way with slavery. And so they're almost making this weird argument that, well, because they screwed up in the past, then we should just think it was all screwed up to begin with, and it's completely screwed up now, and it's nowhere in the middle. It's just this or that, you know. Anyway, like what I see as being a danger there is kind of like you were saying earlier, where they kind of set the mentality up for failure. I don't know. I'm kind of losing my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Well, it's kind of late where you are, I think.
Yeah, getting on my second glass, and
yeah, I've got how many? 3 behind me now. So yeah. No, I think you're right. That's lots of good points. I mean, there's quite a few different directions we could go here, and it's almost like we should probably do like a couple follow-ups on this as well.
yeah,
There's so much to talk about here. I mean, because it's like, it isn't just people protesting, or, you know, some people breaking stuff, or the cops, or the BLM side of things, or the federal government. Like, all of these things illustrate a lot of flaws that need to be addressed, as far as I'm concerned. That really, honestly, have been flaws for a very, very long time, and people have ignored it until now. And the way I see it, if you've ignored these problems up to this point, and only now you're beginning to try to do something about it, it's probably too late. It's too entrenched.
yeah,
It's too well established. Like, the system is far too complex to change in a meaningful way. Like, you know, people are like talking about police reform and blah 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 and stuff like that, and defund the police and everything. I mean, we talked about that, but it's like, it goes deeper than that. It's not just a matter of the police. You know, you can talk about systemic racism all day, and whether that exists or not is irrelevant. The problem is, it, all of this is precipitated by bad laws, like bullshit legislation that should never have happened, and now we're starting to feel the repercussions of it, and it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And I'm getting all sweaty now. But I mean, I guess on the hope side of things, better late than never. I just hope that people will not take things on a superficial level. They'll take it all the way down to the bottom, from the top to the bottom. Like this is something. This is a conversation that has been. We've needed to have this conversation for a very long time, and I don't think it's something that is simple.
No.
Like, there's a lot to it, and it's basically like we should definitely, racism, definitely bad, definitely a big thing, a big topic we should talk about, but it goes deeper than that. Like, it's everything, basically. It's the whole entire structure of things, is the way it's grown and what the behemoth has become that needs to be addressed. Because we should have a system where the most vile, virulent, and destructive, angry racist could get to the very top of the system and not do anything meaningful. That's the kind of system I would like to see. Why do people want a system where one bad person or a couple bad people can completely run roughshod over everybody and trample rights and, like, ship people off to secret prisons or something like that? Like that. Why do we want a system like that? I certainly don't. So yes, we should be talking about the societal side of things, but we should also be talking about the governmental side of things, the legislative side of things. Like, you in order to fix something, you have to fix it correctly. And sometimes fixing involves deconstructing and reconstructing something, or demolishing it and starting over. In fact, people talk all the time. They yammer on all day long about the founding fathers. It's like, yeah, you know what? They anticipated this very thing and supported the idea of, when a government becomes too corrupt or too big or goes off in a weird direction or something like that, it's completely justified to take it apart and start again.
Well, yeah, the foundation, the rot was already in the foundation. It's not perfect. You can't expect it to be perfect. And that rot just grew over time. They missed stuff that, because when they did enumerate the rights, they forgot a whole lot of really important things, let's face it. And people took advantage of that over time. And that rot just grew and grew, and it's all the way back to the start.
Well, I completely agree. Like, I mean, they did the best with what they knew. But this is the thing. Like, being a scientifically minded person, I think you have to perform experiments, which they even consider the United States a grand experiment, right? It's an experiment. We're testing, and we collect data and evaluate the results of what we do, and then we change things, right? Like, you do something based on the results of your experiment. And it's like it some of the ideas were great. A lot of ideas actually were really great. The kind of unprecedented, actually. But like you said, it was imperfect. And we've learned some things in the last 200 plus years. And so maybe we need to just start fresh.
The United States in its infancy was basically Chaz.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, it was very anarchistic, actually.
Yeah, the thing that everybody cheered when they squashed it after 3 or 4 weeks, like bugs under the thumb, that was us.
Yeah, that was the beginning.
Us 450 years ago. Like, we were just starting out as a little breakaway from England. We were still English people.
Yeah.
and and we're over there doing our autonomous thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Well,
we just
sure.
went and squashed that, and everyone's like, "Long live the Queen!"
Exactly. I mean, I maybe I honestly I just don't know. I have my ideas, which could probably be. I could probably do an hour microscopy about the ideas I have about things. But maybe we need to break things apart, go back to the Articles of Confederation or something and kind of start fresh, have conversations about stuff, maybe balkanize the country, let people do their own experiments in different places. Like, I think the federal government, the federal side of that is way too big, way too powerful. If you went back 200 years and there were federal agents in a state doing anything, like armed anything, it would have been pandemonium. That would not fly back then, and the fact that we let it fly now is a serious problem.
Yeah.
Because granted, this is pretty tame compared to what's going on in China or Hong Kong and stuff like that. But this is like a sign. This is, a point where people should wake up and start paying attention and start thinking about things and talking about things.
Yeah. What we're on is a legitimate slippery slope. So it's not inconceivable in any manner that we could end up very quickly like Hong Kong or something, where people are getting beaten and dragged out of the streets randomly and, like never heard from again. I mean, we're pretty much doing that now. Yeah, it's an actual slippery slope, and I know that's a common logical fallacy, but it's going down a slippery slope like too easily. Like,
Well, the slippery slope is only a fallacy when it's fallacious. Like, it's a genuine thing
it's a genuine thing, and we are sliding down it now because, I mean, like I'm losing count of how many times I've been like, wait, can someone just do that? Like, why aren't we stopping? Like,
okay, I would recommend, there's a short poem called "First They Came," that everybody should read. And
I was gonna name the episode after a line from that.
Yeah, it illustrates beautifully why you should, because people think, well, that could never happen to me because I'm X, right? Like, oh, I'm a Republican, so that would never happen, or I'm a Democrat, so that would never happen, or something like that. I'm this way, well, it like you said, a slippery slope. Like, you have to defend when justice is on the line. You have to defend even people you disagree with, if it's a principled kind of thing. Like, maybe you disagree on politics or some sort of philosophy or something like that, but when something is obviously wrong, I think everybody has common ground in that regard. Like, yeah.
If you found yourself standing on a curb and the person next to you was struck to their knees and a gun was placed at their forehead, and you could tell that there was no reason for it, you don't need to sit around and wait and get to the facts. You can see that some bullshit's happening. If you allow that trigger to get pulled, it's almost like you're pulling the trigger by not doing something. Like, it really needs to be looked at that way, whether it's a little drastic or not. It really could end up in that situation. It's happened in plenty of other countries. It's happening in other countries right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's a thing that just was in our human savage past or something, and it's going on right now. It's going on here at home now.
Well, I think people should speak up, like, say something, do something, like, if something's not right. And we're conditioned, don't resist the police. go take it to court, file a complaint. You could deal with it after the fact. Well, if something is actually unjust, like ask George Floyd, ask Eric Garner, like,
Yeah.
like, okay, you're dead. How are you going to file a complaint at that point?
Yeah.
It's too late. And so people standing around and doing nothing. And I mean, you don't necessarily, I'm not saying you have to take up arms against somebody, but at least step in, do something, anything. Shit, just people standing around filming something with their cell phone, they're dead.
Yeah.
Like, and like I said, I don't think this is the end. I think this is the inevitable outcome of having a system that works this way. And, we could talk about current events and how things are currently, but fast forward 20 years into the future, like, how's it going to look if nobody does anything?
Yeah.
The systems of control don't relinquish their control. They don't just happily sit by and just like get weaker. Basically, they always vie for more control. And so, at what point are you, as a person who wants to be free and be able to associate with who you want to and protest things and talk freely, like, at what point, where's the line where you finally have had enough? Because I think for a lot of people, we haven't reached that point yet, I guess.
Oh, what is that line going to be?
Yeah.
I don't even want to think about that. Like, yeah, I've heard so many people be like, well, these guys should have just done what the cop said, or, well, they were, stealing a candy bar or something. They're sitting here being judge and jury of somebody, like,
And executioner.
without a trial, and they're just sitting there, like, looking through their TV and being like, well, he was clearly just stealing a candy bar, so it's fine that he's dead. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Are you the same person that was like, well, Michael Jackson should get his day in trial, or Bill Cosby should get his day in trial before we cast judgment? It's like, you're being a hypocrite.
Yeah, totally. And like, Eric Garner's a good example. Like, the dude was just selling cigarettes without paying taxes. So for for want of a vice tax, the guy is dead. Is that the kind of world we want to live in?
George Floyd was only thought to have been passing a bad check, but he actually wasn't. So he wasn't even committing a crime. And
and people say, like, well, he was a career criminal. He has a history. And it's like, well, okay, fine. But that doesn't mean that in this situation, it's justified to fucking kill him.
Right.
Like, what was he doing in that moment that justified being choked to death?
Yeah, that's an answer I don't really want to hear from people, because I'm afraid that they actually have one.
Yeah.
So there's some people that I, like, really cared about, that I've started to, like, see their true colors when all this stuff starts happening, and you see how they think and how they justify killing this many people or whatever. But if you say, like, something about the coronavirus, like the numbers coming down there, and then they want to be like, well, even one person dead is too bad. Like, which one is it? Like, people are just not consistent. No.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's like, if you're a person of science, a person of reason, that logical consistency is really important. Don't be a hypocrite. If you have a standard, apply it everywhere, or don't have a standard at all. Just be an insane random person, like the state. It's it's bad. And I see, so the way I see it right now, this country, the US, is in a state of cold civil war. There's a war of ideas going on, um, you know, and the
Yeah,
sad part about it is that so many people, if they sat down and had a conversation, had a beer together, like
a
they'd
Heineken.
find so much common ground. Yeah, the Heineken ad. Yeah, exactly. Like you would find common ground with people. You'd find a lot you could agree on, and you'd actually be able to you know like blend together in some way, like get along, find a way to get along. But
Well, that
between
reminds me of a point I was going to make earlier. When it comes to like revolution, we've got this tactical disadvantage, a huge one, and it's that we can't disseminate information amongst ourselves properly. Like tactically, let's say, like if we were to form little militias or something, we would have to communicate with each other and understand each other and hear each other through media of yesteryear that could actually be achieved without some kind of influence, without some kind of pull or propaganda. You know, you just mail a letter or whatever, or you telephone or something. But as all of this technology has basically given people more and more power and more omniscience, then we kind of get sucked into this void where they're pulling the strings way up here, and we all think we've got all this freedom. We all think we could rise up against the government at any time, but we're being manipulated into war with each other. Just bring it back around to your cold Civil War thing.
Yeah, no, that's totally it. Um, it is manipulation. It's pitting factions against each other for some kind of political gain. That's it's been done for quite a while. This is nothing new. Like echelon, right? Like you can't communicate without somebody up there knowing. You're talking about like if you were to try to organize something, right? Like
Right.
you can't do it without the powers that be knowing what you're doing. And there are ways, encrypted mesh networks and things like that. There's some tools you could look them up. But yeah, using something like Facebook or something. Oh yeah, you're instantly labeled a terrorist. It's insurrection. They can call upon all kinds of various acts throughout the ages to quell insurrection.
The media available to us. It's got that built-in weakness in that it's pervasive, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's good that we have that communication, that instantaneous knowledge, but that knowledge has a lot of noise around the wire coming from the ether.
Yeah.
Well, and disrupting it.
Sure, and trusting the big media is a dangerous thing. I would encourage everybody to look up
not just the big media, but
well, yeah,
media too.
But do some research into Operation Mockingbird. I think it is. That's an interesting one. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want to say too much. But yeah, that is an issue. If people, let's just say, for the sake of the discussion, that a literal Hitler, like we clone Hitler, we resurrect him, right, and elect him president, and we
raise him to be a little painter boy, and then we tell him he's shit at it.
Exactly. And he's like those well, I'm not going to say the J word because that's probably going to we're already demonetized anyway, but let's just say this is a thought experiment for people, the viewers. Let's say Hitler himself came to power, like ran for president and became president, and then decided to start changing things. There's brown shirts running around, killing people in the middle of the night, abducting people. They're taking all the Jews. They're sticking little badges on them. They're shipping them off in freight trains, which, by the way, that's what they're doing in China. That's a whole, never mind. It's a digression there. But let's just say that does happen. What do you do? What powers do we have to respond to that? Because as far as the federal government's concerned, they're the right ones. They're correct. They're the legitimate force. So if you fight against it, you're going to be seen as an insurrectionist, some kind of terrorist or something like that. And so the kind of like powers that we've bestowed on this government don't really allow for any kind of resistance to it. Like whatever it is just in its own eyes. And if you resist, you're the bad guy, essentially, however evil they may be. And so it's so hot up here. I don't know if I made any sense there.
Well, I'm having my very last, like the last reserves of my Washington beer, Dark Persuasion, and I don't know. I think I'm already used to the Memphis beer because it's hitting me. Missed that Washington beer.
But what do you think about that, though? You know,
I forgot.
Well, the point is that our like, especially at the federal level, the government is always right.
Right.
And so if something truly evil, right, like actual Hitler became president and started killing people, like massacring people by the millions and spouting a bunch of bullshit, stuff about some group of people, and encouraged everybody to kill him and was slaughtering them, and we were like, hey, wait a second, this is wrong. And like, what recourse do we have? Yeah, you could protest, you could vote all you want, but it doesn't matter at that point. So if you resist forcefully, you're going to be seen as the bad guy because you're going against the government. Insurrection, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And there's precedent for dealing with that. I might be saying too much. I could be on a list now. But that's a thing. Like, it's something for people to think about. Like, okay, you want something, but by giving that kind of control to an entity, an organization, you've also relinquished the ability to fight against corruption. And we're now seeing the beginning of that.
Yeah. I almost feel like emboldened to openly talk about inciting revolution, because like we're not big fish. We're just a little fish.
That's a PGT joke, by the way. Nobody knows what that is.
We're just the small actors in this, and now I went and forgot my point.
Well, no, that's true. Sure. But the thing is, a voice is very powerful. It can move. Like, we might be little fish, right? But if the right people are inspired, people in the right positions, they can affect change in a big way, in a way that we can't. That's, I guess, my thought on that. Yeah.
I don't want, not that I want to burn everything down and start over again, because that sounds like a real pain in the ass, like a real bitch to deal with. Yeah. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not going to be necessary. and just like right now with the whole masks and COVID thing, it's like, yeah, it kind of sucks to have a mask on for a while, but like the more we just cut through it and get it over with and rip the band-aid off, that the quicker it'll be over. But everyone's just kind of being like, but I don't wanna, and dragging the whole thing out.
Yeah. No, you're right. And like thinking about that, I don't want to burn things down either. I mean, I might be an anarchist, but I'm more of a pacifist, like the voluntarism side of that. Like I think that you can affect change without destruction and killing. Like and I think if people simply
You
see
can't.
things for what they are, they will suddenly realize that none of this shit is legitimate, and non-participation will destroy it far more effectively than any kind of Molotov cocktail ever will. Just simply just break away from it, like do your own thing, right?
What if, I was thinking about that earlier, what if we just all as a people collectively decided, you know what, you guys really suck and you're blowing through money and just printing more to blow through that more, and we're just all gonna stop paying taxes, like all of us, everybody. We're not
Yeah,
paying.
well, that would work. That's the thing. It's like government doesn't generate anything. It doesn't make anything. All of its money comes from people essentially voluntarily giving things. Obviously, there's the threat of force behind that voluntary action, but essentially, it's something that you're coerced into doing. So yeah, you want to defund the police? Stop paying taxes. Simple as that. There you go. Done. Like you want to get rid of all the the bullshit going on at the federal level, just don't pay federal taxes. If everybody did that, or I mean, well, we talk
more than likely what the government would do with its dwindling reserves would be like, well, let's cut funding to handling sewage treatment and make sure that we've got bigger guns.
And that's a good point, because in times of when there's less resources like that, there does tend to be kind of a punishment aspect to it. Like they're not going to cut their salaries. The top tier people is still going to get paid, but we're going to make sure that everything that's important to you doesn't get funded or isn't functional.
Right. Well, that's what the SPD, the Seattle Police Department, said when everyone was like, "Hey, we wanted to fund you guys." Then they came out and they were like, "Oh, they could have been like, well, okay, I guess we won't be able to buy as many big shiny guns on the next year's budget." No, instead they were like, "Well, we're gonna have to cut most of our people of color from the force."
Well, yeah, or they're going to say, well, murders, we're not going to respond to them. Property crime, we're not, like thefts and break-ins, we're not going to respond to those. Oh, but you can be sure as shit assured that they're going to be arresting people for drugs and prostitution.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that'll still happen. Civil asset forfeiture is totally going to go through the roof. Like, that'll still be going on, but they're not going to, respond to the stuff that people actually want. And that's bullshit. And, well, okay, well, what if nobody? Here's the thing. There was a time a while ago when the U.S. dollar was backed by something valuable, gold, right? Like it was the gold standard. We had the dollar connected with a finite resource that had value the world over. And then we dispensed with that. And now it's basically faith. The dollar's kind of like a religion. Like you just have to believe that it has value. And if you don't believe, oh yeah, we're going to go to war with your country, which we do all the time. Hence the petrodollar aspect of it. But if people suddenly lost faith in the value of the dollar, essentially the government would lose all of its power, because its power is money, right? Like, yeah, okay, there's the military, there's force and stuff like that. But basically, it all comes down to money. So
Well, yeah, it's like it is a religion or a drug in a way, because you look at these mega rich people and they don't give two shits about other people. Like if they did, like if you look at some of the comparisons that people have made, like just to give you like a scope of how much billions of something really is, or whatever, like how many years you'd have to work and never spend any money in order to get like $1 billion or whatever is like 10 lifetimes or something. It's like anyone that's got that much freaking money and doesn't just pour it all back into his fellow human or her fellow human, this is like, I think they're psychopaths. I don't know, like that.
well, some do, but yeah, that's a good point.
Some don't. I don't know of any that basically just give themselves a comfortable living and then spend hundreds of billions of dollars on the rest of the world.
Well, and that is an issue. I think the money, essentially, I'll probably do like a KSU or a minute microscopy about like what is money versus currency, all that stuff. But it's essentially just a store of value, like it's a trade mechanism, and yet it's become this kind of standard by which we measure everything, and that's bullshit. It's like it's just a tool. That's all it is. That's it, plain and simple. But
So
I feel like
would currency be the intangible worth, and money is basically like a physical representation of what that worth is, or something?
essentially, yeah, like gold is money, like that would be real sound money, and as some people in certain circles that I follow like to call it, Fed coin, that's currency. But that's a whole different topic, and we've kind of gone down the rabbit hole here. Actually, this is, but it's all related, and there's probably a lot more that we could and should talk about. But I think we've covered kind of all the basics, I guess. I'd like to hear from people. If I don't get heat stroke and die in my what was once an attic and is now my studio, I'd like to hear from people what you want to talk about. I just thoughts on things that we've talked about, because there's so much, and I think this is a really big deal. I'm glad that people are finally starting to see things for what they are. I just say, like, I will implore you, as somebody who's started to see things, like, keep looking, investigate, dig a little deeper, because it doesn't end there. It's not just like, Black Lives Matter is the end of it and defund the police is the end of it. No. This goes very deep. And I hope that this conversation has given people some ideas, like some starting points, some things to begin on. And I think I'll probably do some episodes on, or minute microscopies maybe, or something. This might end up having to be like kitchen sink university stuff. But I want to talk more about a lot of the things that we've discussed, because I think it's really important. And I think if you care about this stuff, it's definitely worth talking about. If my overly overheated and beer ingested self is making any sense to anybody.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm
Mhm.
about to take my last sip of Washington beer.
No. No. This show is so simultaneously darkly serious, but also completely ludicrously humorous. But I think that's actually like a valuable thing. Like sometimes you just got to laugh. Like, you know,
Yeah, well,
the world is fucked, basically. Like,
yeah,
things are fucked.
this show is a great example of how people should be. Like, we're talking about screwed up stuff, and we're just getting wasted, and like we don't even care. We're having a great time, you know. Like, you got to keep your spirits up, and in our particular way is humor, I guess. And
Well, and it's been said many times, like Mel Brooks when talking about like Blazing Saddles, he's like, you know, if you want to address a very controversial and difficult topic, the best way is humor.
Yep.
And he's right. Like, people should watch that movie. It's actually pretty good. Yeah, it's, oh geez, so overheated. I think
That's the one who's not living in Tennessee right now.
I wish we had the money to end on that song by Arrested Development, Tennessee.
I don't know that one.
Oh, it's a good one. I love Arrested Development. I have an old CD of theirs that's like so worn out. Like, if you could,
Got a TV show too.
it is, yeah. But this is a band, and they're really cool. I've loved them for so long. But yeah, I don't know how you wear a CD out because lasers don't make contact with anything, but this CD is totally worn.
I did that with a first CD I ever bought. It was Stabbing Westward's second album, and yeah, it like I could see like a little spot on the CD. I could like see through it. I was like, oh, I guess I burnt my CD like just listening to it too often or something. And I actually had to go and rebuy it.
Oh, jeez. Wow. But yeah, I think this is a good conversation, and I think it's something that deserves a lot more discussion. People who sit down and talk about things will find that they have a lot more common ground, I think. I probably had more to say, but I'm like getting overheated here, and I think we're well over an hour now.
Oh wow!
So yeah, an hour and 15 or ish. Yeah.
Dang.
I have a lot more to talk about here, so maybe we'll have to go back and I don't know, revisit this discussion at some point, hopefully. But yeah. Oh man, wow. You just got disappeared, man.
I made it out.
Yeah, it's like if you feel concerned about things the way they are now, I think you should be asking yourself why and how did we get to this point, and what can we do about it? And it isn't trivial. It's not like it's not like, oh yeah, you could just like pass a few laws and fix a few things because, you know, there's the law of unintended consequences you have to consider. I think this goes really deep. And like we talked about before, the there's so many people who are so diehard on the structure of things, the Constitution, it's everything, and it's like, no, they had good ideas, but obviously, if you get to the point where there's factions warring, in essence, it's not perfect. So we got to start over. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Personally, I think let's do it without burning stuff. So I don't think we have to do that. But, that's a completely different topic for another hour-long conversation.
Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, you never really get much done until you start setting things on fire. Yeah.
Well,
Rising
but then here's the thing. The problem with revolutions, like violent revolutions, is, you just have to go back and look at like the French Revolution, Robespierre, right? Like cutting heads off left and right. And then pretty soon he was the guy getting his head cut off. Maybe that's not the right way to do it. You leave a vacuum when you go that route.
But has there ever been a successful revolution that didn't at some point become what we call violent?
Well,
which probably should be more nuanced than it is.
That's a good point. And here's the thing. I think maybe a lot of these kinds of things end up being violent because people wait for too long to do something about things, to have conversations, to try to affect change. They wait until it becomes too much to bear. And then the only course of action is violence. And
fine, right. Well, that's fine to keep in mind going forward, but it doesn't really do any good now to be like, well, you should have done it this way. I mean, like we are where we are. So if it's coming to violence, it needs to come to violence, because otherwise it's just going to get dragged out longer and made worse for everybody else.
Maybe. But then I think you can still, at every stage of a situation, change things without that, if you're smart about it. Because certainly burning things and destroying things and killing people and beheading people is not really a smart way to do things. It's not a calculated methodological solution. But people tend to not act until they get to that point. They cross that threshold, and then they act without thought. And I think now more than ever, reasoned thought and caution is warranted. Like there has to be a game plan, and not just like anything goes. Just burn it all to the ground. Like that's not going to fix things. Sometimes that is the way you have to go. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I don't know. Leave your comments in the description. Like, what do you think?
I'd rather rip the Band-Aid off and just get that bit over with now so that we can start rebuilding sooner.
Well, but here's the thing. If you start warring, whose solution is the right solution? Like not everybody agrees in this country on the right course of action, and that is an issue.
No, that's a good point. But let me ask you: did they write the Constitution of the United States before they started the Revolutionary War, or did they get pissed off and start fighting and then coalesce and find a route to go once they've basically like defeated the common enemy?
Well, that's true. And now, granted, that might have been the only course of action given the situation. I think there's better situations, or better courses of action, I guess, if you're if you think about it. There's ways of solving things. Like you don't actually have to go down that path to resolve this. But I have my concerns that that's the way it's going to go. And it may end up being a like multi-dimensional course. It's not going to be just like us versus them, like, oh, the people versus the government. Now, there's a lot of people who have different views, and they're going to be fighting each other too, because they buy into all this us versus them bullshit. this propaganda and stuff, and so many factions going on right now that if the fuse is lit, like if the fire is going, you're going to see neighbors killing neighbors, and I don't want to see that. Yeah.
The civil war that we're in now is so much more poisonous than the original one, because we don't even see the grand disagreements that we're having between amongst ourselves, for being that bad, because the poison has been seeping in so slowly that we've just acclimated to things getting shittier and shittier, and being meaner people, and
over like ridiculous reasons too. And that's one thing that separates this cold Civil War from the 1800s hot Civil War. That was a state versus state sort of thing back then. Now it's fractured. Like, there is no battle line. There's no like territories or anything. The territories are our own minds. It's very different. And I don't know. I worry about the direction things are going, and I think people need to talk more, have more conversations, and sit down and just look for common ground, because you're going to find it if you're looking for it. If you're looking for adversarial conflict, you're going to find it too. And I think that's dangerous. But yeah, I guess now that we're like an hour and 20 minutes in, going back to Portland, it's fucked. It's a bullshit situation. That should never happen. There's a lot of concerns I have about this, like you said, the slippery slope, like and this is only the beginning.
They're going for Chicago next, apparently.
Well, and it'll be coming to Seattle too, I'm sure, because Seattle's another hotbed.
Yeah, it is.
And the thing is, like, it goes back to the whole states' rights thing. Like, states are essentially autonomous on their own, or they should be. And
we better mow over them with our cars then.
Yeah, exactly. And I do have a concern with the federal side of things, just kind of like dictating to other people, like, oh, you're not able to handle your own affairs, so we're just going to jump in whether you want it or not. Well, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge problem whether it's the federal government, the states, counties, cities, towns, whatever. Like, there's problems aplenty. But this is a big one. And yeah, I'm like overheating here, so I'm trying to do my best to be coherent and make effective arguments and statements, despite like being so hot, man.
Yeah, I've got all this beer on my brain, so it's probably a good time to wrap it up for the night and do our token anti-greeting outro. What do you call that? Soliloquy, sermon. Anyway,
wow, you had that much beer and you pulled up soliloquy. That's I'm impressed. Yeah. Nice.
What I'm trying to get to is, thanks for deep sink diving with us. That really long intro, escapade, diatribe.
Oh man. This has been a really good this has been a really good conversation. I like to hear other people's thoughts on this, like what you think about it, what you think about this conversation. I mean, I just like ask, talk to your neighbors, like talk to other people around you, have conversations, even if they're difficult. Yeah, and don't trust everything you're told. Just saying that. But yeah,
Unless kitchen sink microscopy tells you. I was watching the movie 1984 the other day, and
oh shit,
it is scary how much we're. And that's a whole other conversation. So
yeah. Okay, so that book is so important to me. I have 2 copies of that. Yeah, it's a good.
I haven't read it in a long time, but it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Oh man. Well, Brave New World is another one that kind of comes to mind.
Aldous Huxley, one of my favorites.
Yeah, man, we should have like an episode just dedicated to like our favorite dystopian books.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd probably bring up Philip K. Dick on many occasions. But anyway, yeah,
well, you're a Philip K. pussy, so.
Oh man,
you just call me an asshole?
Old inside joke. Yeah, I think that's probably a good point to end on, and I really appreciate people, if you're still with us, like sticking it out to the end and listening to things. Definitely share your comments, talk about it, keep the conversation going. Go to ksmvidcast.com if you want to like really talk without censorship, because we don't censor anybody there. It's impossible. So yeah. And I think that's a good point to end on before I go into another rant.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Lightning round.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah, and man, I seriously, people, stay safe out there. Let's get along. Don't die of the COVID. Wear a mask. It's not that big of a deal. Bandanas are cool.
Think of it like being a pirate, but instead of an eye patch, it's a mouth patch.
Yeah, exactly. Oh. And yeah, I just, man, I have a good night.